Good afternoon, good morning, good evening. Welcome to this Quantum Alignment Show. My name is Clarinda Mann, and I'm here with Lovaine Cohen, and we are going to be discussing the Breaking the Chains um, program that we are going to be launching the beginning of next year. Really excited to be talking about this information and want to kind of just provide some information about what this is about, where this came from, and some of the things that we hope to accomplish while we're running this program. So we have Breaking the Chains. Um, and again, my name is Clarinda. I work as a registered nurse. Also, I am a quantum human design specialist, graduated this year, a quantum alignment system practitioner level 2, a traditional astrologer, astrocartographer, and a Reiki master teacher. And just for those that are curious, this is what my design chart looks like. I am a 4/6 emotional projector. And for a projector, I guess I do have quite a bit of definition. But still, we have this projector energy going on here. All right, Lovaine.
Hey there, everybody. So, my name is Lovaine Cohen, and I am honored to be on this journey with Clarinda. I think she's brilliant, and I learn so much from her every time we speak and we meet and we collaborate. So, thank you, Clarinda, for allowing me to go on this journey with you. So, I'm also a quantum human design specialist and also a quantum alignment system practitioner. I am a chronic pain coach, and I also have been living with ankylosing spondylitis for over 20 years. I'm also a volunteer coach for the Canadian Spondylitis Association. I also have a blog on my website, and I'm also a writer for WebMD. So the reason why I originally took Clarinda's first launching of the program earlier this year was that I wanted to learn more about intergenerational trauma because I felt that I had my own issues with that. And I was also very fascinated about astrology, and that's something else that I am studying as well. I'm not a pro like Clarinda is, but I am learning from her and also from my own study. And one of the biggest things that I took away from the first time Clarinda presented Breaking the Chains was that my experience living as a Black person in Canada has been totally different from those people that were in the program earlier this year. And it almost made me feel like I was living under a rock, to be honest. I know that there's problems, I know racism does exist in the world, but from my perspective, I've never really had anybody bother me, or I never really felt threatened when leaving my home or anything like that. If I felt threatened, it was only because as a woman, maybe feeling uncomfortable walking at night. I never thought it had anything to do with my skin color. So some of the things that came up in the original program really opened my eyes and really made me aware to the problem and what's happening. So I had to reach out to Clarinda and I had to ask her, do you want me to help you do something with this? I had to be involved in some way. And she graciously accepted my invitation. And so here we are.
Yeah, and I'm so glad that you have joined me on this journey, Lovaine. I think that was one of the things we talked about, how different the experiences were, even though we're both Black women, but residing in different countries, me in the United States and you in Canada. And it was kind of shocking to me even to learn about how different that experience was for you there, and that a lot of those things just hadn't happened there, that have happened here, even though we do share a common ancestry from Africa. The experiences of our more closer ancestors in these places has been experienced quite a bit differently, and I think it's really important for people to learn about that, because I think not just like myself, but a lot of other American, African American Black people would be surprised about the difference that is there. So thank you for joining me here with this. And this is Lovaine's chart. I don't know what do you want to mention something about your chart, Lovaine?
Sure. So I am, for those of you familiar with human design, or for those of you who are watching and you're studying and you're fascinated by human design, as I am, and Clarinda, I am a manifesting generator, and my profile is a 1-4. So if you know anything about human design, with the 1 line, it's all about research, baby, and digging in deep. And so that is so true about me. But again, I didn't really realize until I started studying human design, really that was what I was about. So studying human design, now becoming a specialist, has really opened my eyes to how I operate in the world and the best ways that I can do that. And things making sense, like some of the energies that I have that are consistent in me and what they mean. And when you get to learn your chart, you kind of just go, wow, that is so true. So that's what I love human design for. And I also use human design with my coaching clients too.
Yeah, thank you. All right, so before we go into the information that we're in regards to breaking the chain, we wanted to do a little tarot card pull to see the energy of this, because this information can be challenging. It can be a lot to absorb. It's something that often people don't want to address because of the discomfort it can bring up. So we wanted to see what the overall energy was here. What are we really trying to accomplish with this? And what do we need to be mindful about?
Yes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull a card from a deck called the Oracle of the Energies by Colette Baron Reed. I love this deck. It's beautiful. And so in the program that you'll learn about some more later in the show, we're going to be doing card pulls as part of the process, because I think it's really important to understand the energies that's going on around us as we move through this work. So I've shuffled the cards already a little bit. Oh, and there's a card that wants to pop out at me, so I'm going to take this one out. And this was called Close Encounters, and this is if you can see it, Close Encounters. So I'm just going to read from the book. This is actually represents Earth and red, and Earth is sound and represents the first chakra. So let me just read this one. Okay. Actually, this is the water element. Sorry, not Earth. This is water element. So Close Encounters. Okay. The basic concept of this card is vulnerability as a strength. Letting others see your wounds as well as your strengths. Setting healthy boundaries. So I'll read a little bit of it. I'm not going to read it all, but this is a time of connection that asks for you to be vulnerable and authentic. Oh, that is so powerful. Okay. Let go of any social masks or constructs you use to keep yourself apart from others. Lower your shields and allow yourself to step into a dance of intimacy. When you become close to people, you remind yourself that you are not alone. You're part of a beautiful, meaningful bond. At a deep spiritual level, there are so many lessons offered to you in this closeness. At a social level, intimate relationships help you ignite the spark of life. That is the power of affinity. You flourish as a result of offering emotional honesty, a true desire for equality, love, friendship, and laughter. Well, I think, Clarinda, that is so fitting for what we are doing here. Don't you think? What are your thoughts? What are your thoughts?
That is powerful. So is that connected to, so since it's a water element, is it connected to the sacral center?
The water is connected. Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's right.
Okay. I feel like there's a lot of cleansing and healing that is occurring with that card. I think it was powerful. I mean, to think about this needing to be vulnerable, right? And this vulnerability as a strength and speaking our authentic truths. I will say that was one of the biggest things that I started noticing when I was taking quantum human design level 3. I remember hearing a lot about the deconditioning process, and I was starting to think about my life, my journey, and how I felt like it was so hard for me to be authentic or to speak authentically. And I was worried about what people would think, what people would say, because my conditioning, right? And a lot of the conditioning that I was experiencing was, yes, from our society now, but I realized that there were some things that were going on that were more connected to me being a Black woman. That this conditioning, keep your head down, don't look people in the eye, don't be seen, don't be recognized, it's not safe, was playing a part into how I was living in this world. And it was something that I started feeling bitterness about. I started feeling anger about. And I was like, I need to get this out. I want to do something about this. And so when you speak to the authenticity, I think that that's huge because it takes a lot of courage to be authentic and to be vulnerable, which those are just not easy things. So I really love that card, and it really was speaking to my soul. Let's say that.
Yeah, and I don't know if everybody can see this, but there's a butterfly. It's a butterfly in a cage. So butterfly represents metamorphosis, change, transformation, rebirth. And this is really what this program is going to be all about for you.
Yeah, and when we think about breaking the chains, I think when you speak about that butterfly metamorphosis, I used to use that a lot because I've always considered myself someone obsessed with transformation. And I remember when I learned about the actual process of the caterpillar going to the butterfly, turning into the butterfly, evolving and growing into that there are these things called imaginal cells, right? So when the caterpillar spins himself into this cocoon, he actually breaks down completely into a liquid. And there are these imaginal cells there that are like, hey, this is what your future looks like. This is your potential. This is what you can be. But to get to that point, we have to break down everything. We have to get to the truth of it. And you just got to become like into the nothingness, right? And out of that nothingness comes this amazing, beautiful creature. And the process was not easy. It takes complete breaking down. And that fits with breaking the chains because that's the goal of this program. It's breaking down all of those constructs that have been put in place to keep us from living a truly empowered and authentic life.
Love it.
All right. I love that card. I love the energy of that. So I think we were gonna do a little bit of a body-centered practice before we even get any further in, Lovaine, right?
Yes. Yeah. So what we like you to do is just take a moment to place your hand over your heart. And if you wish, close your eyes. And then just take a few breaths, deep breaths, in through your nose and out through your mouth. Just try to get grounded and centered in your body. And just see where you feel in your body. Do you feel any fear? And if so, where? Do you feel something in your stomach? Do you feel something in your throat? Does it feel tight? Is it hot? Is it pulsing? Or is it feeling numb? Just take a note of that as we move through the rest of the show. We're going to come back to that a little bit later.
So here is a truth. History is not the past. It is the present. We carry our history with us. We are our history. And this quote is by James Baldwin. Another truth, and this is one from Resma Menakem. For all its fraudulence, however, race is a myth with teeth and claws, one that continues to tear bodies apart. Institutions, structures, beliefs, practices, and narratives have been created around it and have helped to perpetuate it. Until we recognize it for the collective delusion it is, it might as well be real. All right, so part of the Breaking the Chains program came about because I wanted to see the energy that was in place at the time that the first enslaved African people arrived in the Americas. And I feel like it was a really powerful thing to look at, to see the dynamics that were going on. So I have here the astrological chart and also the human design chart of what was happening, the energy. Now, keep in mind that this energy was not just for the people that were being enslaved. This energy was about all people that were existing and living at this time. This meaning that all white European people and African people were being impacted by these influences. I think some of the biggest things that stand out, and I'm not going to like do a complete breakdown because I talked about this recently in conference about the chart and how how we got here, but I wanted to like give you a little bit of an idea or an overview. Some of the big things that stand out astrologically, and I don't know how familiar everyone is, there's going to be different levels, but in astrology there are places in the chart that can be what we would consider to more challenging house placements, and those tend to be the 6th and 12th house. The 12th house would take precedence over even the 6th house as a place that would be a challenge, and this is because for for a variety of reasons, actually, because it's the end and it is this ending of the chart of the cycle, but also this is a place where we often carry a lot of things that have been repressed or things that we have not wanted to deal with on an unconscious level. This energy is also connected to the collective, so not just on an individual level, there is a collective connection to this placement. In this chart, the sun, which is our spiritual and soul essence, is placed in this house. And Mercury here is too, which is our communication, our thought processes, the way that we think and interact. Even business is connected to Mercury. We have all of those things here tied in this 12th house, repressed, hidden, not clearly seen or visible. And then in this chart, there is an opposition between the sun and the moon, which the moon represents the body. It is the planet most connected to the material realm in astrology, especially according to traditional astrology. And it's in the 6th house. Now, traditional connotations for both of these houses are connected to slavery and servitude. Often now in modern astrology or modern times, we hear the 6th house connected to our work, our daily routines, but this comes from that place being a place of service. So we have the body being enslaved. We have the mind in this state of enslavement and repression in this chart. And this energy was kind of like screenshot into the collective, right? A couple of the other dynamics that I think are important to point out in this chart are the fact that Pluto is in the 8th house, which is connected to death, also to debt, other people's resources and money, and Mars in the 2nd house, which is connected to what we value. It's a financial house as well, but on a deeper and more spiritual level, it is about things that we value, which first and foremost should be ourselves, right? Self-love. And we have these two planets in an opposition, both connected to power. And we see this energy of power struggle. Who's going to say who has value, who's not? We see the battle for resources taking place here as well. And then the last thing I'll point out about this chart, because there's so many factors that can be looked at, are this 1st house and 7th house. 1st house is connected to the body, the breath, the self. And the 7th house is connected to the other, or partnerships, relationships. And we have Neptune and Jupiter with the ascendant and descendant kind of in this opposition. And so we see this illusion that is being created of unity in Libra, right? This illusion or deception even that we are going to be this thing. And then we have Jupiter and Aries expanding this energy of separateness, of me, of the individual, of the self. And so these partnerships may have been made or at least portrayed to be that they're going to be beneficial for multiple people or for the whole. And in actuality, it was more about self, who can have power over resources, and the resources ended up being people. Looking at the human design chart, I think a lot of these same themes are being carried over here. We see that this chart has got a lot of individual circuitry and some tribal circuitry, but especially the 4521 channel, we have this, who's going to have control of the resources, and with the 3955, we see this lack mentality that can be in place, or this disconnection from source, because I feel like I don't have enough. I feel like I am not enough. And then the thing that stands out the most is that center part, the heart, completely open. Do I love myself? I don't feel lovable. I don't feel connected to source. I don't feel loved by source. I feel abandoned by source. Therefore, I can't love anything else. I can't connect to anything else because I don't know who I am and I don't feel lovable myself. Lovaine, I don't know if you have something you want to throw in that
Oh,
you
I
think.
thought that was excellent. I was getting another education from you again, the master. But yeah, I just find it's very interesting that the G totally open, the G center is totally open, and also too with the head center being open and the 64, I believe, defined. Asking a lot of how. So that kind of reminds me of how did I get here? How did I end up in this place?
Yeah.
Why am I here, kind of thing. So lots of questions, I think, too.
Yeah, and this is something we will be going more in depth into in the actual program. But there's so much that can be pulled out of this. We have the channel of struggle. We have the gate 59, the sun in the 59 too, which we had found some really interesting things to pull out in regards to that, and also the 55, the earth. The earth is in the gate 55 too, right? And this is the place. The earth's position is where we find our grounding, right? Our grounding in the gate that is connected most to faith and, hey, abundance. Do I feel supported by source creator, right? And that's the grounding force that I feel like was actually missing. Like we weren't really able to ground into that energy. So another, like there's so much here. I think you have the same incarnation cross, don't you?
I do, yeah, I do,
Yeah.
and I have the 3420, definitely,
Yeah,
yeah.
the 3420. So
Yeah, that's it.
I remember you
It's
said, yeah,
creepy.
this chart is a little creepy. It reminds me
It's
of mine a
creepy.
little
Yeah,
bit.
yeah. Because I have the
Yes.
64 as well. I have to find. I just saw my chart earlier. I have a defined head and nausea, etc. But I have the 64 defined. So I definitely can feel that energy, man.
Oh yeah.
And then my G is open as well. I don't have it totally open, but it's open. So yeah, definitely some similarities here with my own personal chart and the first wave chart.
Yeah, yeah. I have the 6447 as well. I think we both share that channel,
Yeah, yeah,
and the Open G Center. So I can definitely connect into that energy too. And the 55.
yeah.
The 55 actually can be a challenging place, I find, because you really do have to feel into that trust and that connection, and sometimes it's easy to get into that place where we doubt that it's really there. So
Hmm.
I imagine that could have been one of the challenges. But like I mentioned, the place that like right in the center of the chart, the thing that catches your eye is that G center. And this is an image that Karen Curry Parker, Karen has, but it speaks to it so well. And we are going to be incorporating into this program, it's incorporated the resiliency keys. So when we look at this calibration center, the identity center, the G center, a huge center that's impacted. And one of the biggest resiliency keys that stands out, the first one that comes to my mind when I see that Open G Center is lovability. Do I feel lovable for, who I am? Can I be loved for who I am? And some of the physical impact that can happen with this is the liver and the blood are impacted. So we can have blood disorders, blood issues, and liver problems. Emotional symptoms can be depression, fear of rejection, and fear of authentic self expression. On a personal note, that has been one of the biggest ones for me. The biggest one to overcome was this fear of authentic self expression because I was so afraid for such a long time that if I said what I needed to say, I don't think people would like me as much, or people might not be ready to hear what I have to say, And so, it's just a huge thing, this fear of authentic self expression. But on a deeper level, when we start looking at the dynamics that are taking place from a perspective of being a Black person, it becomes another level of fear. Because not only is it just a concern about, I said something that somebody didn't like, they might not be my friend, it's I said something somebody didn't like, and now my life might be taken. I could be persecuted for speaking my truth and being my authentic self. So there was more of this energy of you cannot be yourself because it's not safe to be yourself.
Hmm.
And then on the spiritual level, feeling unloved or abandoned by God, universe, source, and spirit. Now, that's one thing I can say. I feel like as Blacks have that was a place where they found a lot of their resiliency, was connecting in on a spiritual level. And I think that was one of the things that stands out to me about the Black culture, because we actually are a very resilient culture. And, being able to tune into that spiritual dynamic has gotten them through a lot, had gotten people through a lot.
Yeah.
All right.
So I'm going to talk a little bit about this wound analogy. And yeah, this picture isn't very nice looking. It is kind of gross and disgusting. But we are at a point in time now in our civilization, in our society, where there's a lot of weird, disgusting, gross things going on. And we can no longer, turn a blind eye to what's happening. So, in this picture, this person actually had some kind of a wound and has been patching it up on their own. But as you can see, they're not doing a very good job. There's a lot of neglect here, not taking a very vested interest on trying to really see what's going on. It's just patch job. And so, me personally feeling that this is a patch job that's going on in our society when it comes to the realities of what's really going on. And so it's time that we now have to look at this wound. We have been trying to patch it up over time, and it's not working. And the band-aid is now, basically falling off. And there's infection happening now, infection into the area itself, but infection that's spreading in the body, throughout the blood, into the tissues, into the cells, right? So now we have to really fix this, because if we're not going to fix it, then it looks like it could be a situation where it's just going to get even worse. I mean, it's pretty bad now, but we need to come together collectively and do what we can to help the healing process, so that we can actually move into an era where everything is sustainable and fair and equal for everybody, regardless of what color you are or what your background is. So now it's time for us to take off the blinders. It's time for us to really roll up our sleeves and get to the bottom of the wound and understand it, and then move forward with love and healing on the wound so that we can move to a better place.
Yeah, exactly. So one of the things that I think we talk about a lot, or that you hear talked about a lot, is the trauma that has occurred to Africans or Blacks. But one of the places that I don't think we look to is the trauma that actually happened to European, because before there was the trauma on the Blacks, there was European trauma that we often do not address or talk about. So we focus a lot in this program on intergenerational trauma. And it's actually interesting because Karen has been talking about burnout. And I think that this is one of the ways that most of us have been experiencing some burnout, and maybe not even been conscious of how it was impacting us. But for the European trauma, we don't hear it talked about as much. We don't see it being addressed. And I think that that has led to a lot of the trauma that has happened along the way. So going back, and there's this book by Resma Menakem was really excellent. It's an excellent book. It is called My Grandmother's Hands, and Racialized Trauma and the Pathway to Mending Our Hearts and Our Bodies. And when we're doing this, if we want to heal this country, this world, then we cannot just focus on the trauma that has been endured by African and Black people, but we need to also recognize the trauma that has that happened with Europeans. And now it's time for them to actually start that healing process as well. Here's a quote: "What white bodies did to Black bodies, they did to other white bodies first," by Janice Barbie. And examples of this, because yes, in Americas, there were a lot of different European countries that were, that were here. They were colonizing this area. So the European, the British, we had Spanish, we had the Dutch, we had all types of different people. But this country did end up being primarily run and colonized by the British. Now, Britain was not an easy place at that time to live in for white people. Okay, you could be burned at the stake. They had the rack that they would place people on and torture them on. And a lot of things that to mutilate or dismember people to punish them. And this was something passed down ancestrally to European bodies. This didn't just happen and go away. None of these things have happened and gone away. This is passed on and carried for generations. So that trauma then turned into this trauma, slavery, trauma that was passed on to others. So the white European bodies had been traumatized themselves. They, in turn, were now going to pass this traumatization on to others. When we talk about this program, when we talk about the whiteness and blackness and the trauma, I think it's important to talk about when whiteness actually was invented. Because prior to slavery, being white was not a thing. There were no white people. There were Scottish people. There were Irish people. There were Dutch people. There were British people. There were Spanish people. There were Italian people, right? But they weren't considered to be white. So the invention of whiteness, there's no such thing as race. None scientifically, anthropologically. Racism is a construct, a social construct, and it has its benefits. Money can be made off it, and people who don't like themselves can feel better because of it. It can describe certain kinds of behavior that are wrong or misleading, by Toni Morrison. So what we started to see happening in this process of traumatization was we had a group of people that were white Europeans that were wealthy, that had more power, that had more control. And they had a group of white Europeans that were being subjugated, right? They were not as fortunate. They did not have as many resources. And then oftentimes they were in the same situation as the Blacks that had come over, as far as finances, as far as even status in society. And there would be times when these groups would join together and rise up against the dominating force. And that was not appreciated. They did not like that. The people in control did not like that. So what did they do to stop this from happening? They created whiteness. And what happened then was it gave people this sense of status, a sense of more security, a sense that I am now better than you, and we're not the same. So now I have someone I can dominate. And the thing, it just goes on and on and on. Into segregation, even after slavery is abolished. So we see that our country, because I'm primarily focusing on the United States, we see that our country has gone through these phases and these shifts, but still, we've never really healed. We've made some improvements. As Lovaine was talking about this wound analogy, yes, we have had this wound. This was a huge wound that occurred to the human psyche, right? And what we did was we tried to close it up prematurely. We wanted to say that, nope, it's not there. It doesn't exist. It's all healed. And over time, we have seen this wound become infected and just continue to worsen without really trying to address it. We put the Band-Aids on top. The Band-Aids fall off. We put some more on. We say, we don't want to go in there. That wound is too nasty. I don't want to do all that, it's too hard. It's too painful. It hurts when we go there. And the wound keeps getting worse. We have the civil rights movement. The wound was starting to fester. It's like no longer can people continue to do this, right? No longer can we continue to tolerate this. This phantom limb analogy, because we're talking about wounds, right? And one of the interesting things that I learned about in nursing was the phantom limb experience. Now, we talked about the invention of whiteness and how this separateness was created and how it was me versus we, or you versus, me, them versus all of it, all of these ways to separate, conquer, and divide. The phantom limb analogy, when you look at these images, what do you see? And for a moment, I would just like you to tune into your body, whether you're Black, whether you're white. Lovaine started us into this process in the beginning. When you see these images, what do you feel inside your body? Do you feel heat? Do you feel pain? Do you feel an emotion like anger, disgust, or rage? Look at the images. There's Black men that are being hung, that have been hung, that are lynched, and there are white bystanders, spectators watching these events. We even have in the picture on the left, we have a young girl pointing up. We have little children in the front watching this. This has to be traumatic. This has to be scary to them. Children are born innocently with, and they're products of their environment. Now, yes, we do have that stuff that we carry in the body, but this was something that was being taught as okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
So how do you feel again? So when you looked at these images, so the previous one, and I don't know if anyone's familiar with a very famous Billie Holiday song, Strange Fruit. That song is basically based on lynchings. If you listen to the lyrics and you listen to that song, it's a very, very powerful song. She got in a lot of trouble for recording that. But she said, Billie, being the rebel she was, screw it, I'm gonna sing this song. I encourage you, if you don't know that song, to listen to it and look at the lyrics. So when you see an image of people swinging from the trees, as Billy would say, strange fruit, and little children looking at these images and being there, and the civil rights movement, and the anger, the resentment of people at that time who were just fed up. What do you feel in your body? When you saw that picture of the African family in the beginning of the show there, on an auction block, being, highest bidder property just to buy them to do work. How does that make you feel? Where does that feel in your body? Do you feel anger? Do you feel regret? Do you feel sadness? Do you feel shame? Do you feel something in your body, and where do you feel it? So we just really want you to understand that these are all legitimate emotions, and we just want to bring the awareness to what's going on. We're not saying that you don't know what's happening, but I don't feel that too many people really know the whole story of what really transpired during slavery, the horrors that took place, and how all of this has just been brought forward into our DNA. Not just Black bodies, but white bodies too, Indigenous bodies as well, and
Yeah.
Spanish bodies, all kind of bodies. So we just want you to, understand that. And so with the program, there's going to be parts where you're going to learn a lot about what really happens during this time, but it's also going to be a very open, safe, and loving environment to work through some of these energies and some of the trauma that you may be experiencing in your own life.
Yeah. I think that was a really big thing, a big takeaway from the first round of Breaking the Chains. That, it did start off quite intensely in the beginning. There were a lot of expectations, and nobody knew what to really expect with this, because this is something that is new territory. I don't think that we have ever worked on the racial issues from like in this way. I hadn't seen this much, where we start actually tuning into what we're carrying on the genetic level and what we're carrying energetically connected to this ancestral trauma. But I just know what I felt. I knew that it felt still alive in me. And for me in America, one person did ask a question when I was in conference. And I didn't address that question then, but I think I will just mention it now. The question was basically, what are some of the differences in deconditioning for a Black person versus a white person? And I'll just give you a few. Every day that I live or walk outside of my home, I have to worry about being judged for the color of my skin. I have to worry about how I'm dressed. I have to worry about how I speak, because if that is not perceived as correct, I may not be respected, or seen as someone that has knowledge. It's more so like everything you do. It permeates into every part of your existence. Um, I have to talk to my sons when they're very young. Well, I had to talk to my sons when they were very young about safety because they're Black, and how to behave if they're in the presence of police officers or white people. I have, for years, experienced burnout because I had to live a double life. When I would go into work or when I was in public, there was a different way that I spoke, there was a different way that I dressed, a different way that I acted than that was the true me, because I had been so trained and conditioned. And I mean, I was taught at a very young age. My mom taught me that if I want to be successful, I'm going to have to work harder and be smarter than everyone else because I'm Black. So I walked through life with that in my mind because I wanted to be successful. I wanted to be recognized and appreciated for who I was. But those were the dynamics that were in play and still are. Even though I think now we are in this period where the wound, the band-aids are coming off, and they're not coming off easily. So speaking about trauma and how trauma compounds, this actually was taken from the book by Resma Menakem, My Grandmother's Hands. And it's a pyramid. I love this pyramid. And so we look at the base of this. The foundation of this pyramid is historical trauma, right? And then right above that, we have intergenerational trauma. Above that, we have persistent and pervasive group, institutional, and adverse experiences, adverse adulthood experiences. Then we move into the adverse childhood experiences, social, emotional, and cognitive impairments, adoption of high-risk behavior that lead to early death. When you look at this pyramid, the very basis, the foundation, the beginning of all of this is historical trauma, followed by intergenerational trauma. So these things are huge. If we want to break the chains and really live truly empowered and connected lives, we have to go back into these places. And they're not easy places to go to. But doing this work helps us to build solid foundations for the future. We looked at that wound that looked pretty gross, pretty nasty, right? That's what happens when wounds do not heal correctly. How wounds are supposed to heal. There's 4 stages of wound healing. We have hemostasis, which is a blood clot that forms over the wound. Then we go through an inflammatory response. That's when all the white blood cells, the macrophages, everything come in to get rid of the nasties, right? The bacteria, the virus, anything that's in there, it's coming in there to try to clean it up. Then we have the proliferative phase, where we start getting new tissue, new cells that are beginning to form. And then the remodeling. This is where we see that new layer of freshly healed epidermis. The skin starts coming together. We don't see any wound seeping or infection running through there. It's healing. This is the proper stage of healing. I would dare to say that we may have gotten stuck somewhere here in the inflammatory phase of the wound healing process. So we have quite a ways to go, because now, first of all, we went through the inflammatory process and we had an infection that we didn't get cleaned up. Sometimes the macrophages can't do it alone. Sometimes we have to use antibiotics, right? And we just didn't get the treatment we needed. So we got to go back here. We can't just keep moving forward. Like people, I struggled with this for a while. Like, I want to be love and light. I want to be feeling all of those things. And my spirit kept saying, yeah, no, this is still here. You still are carrying this. It was still inside of me, that resentment, burning in the back burner, deep down inside. But I couldn't move forward in my healing process until I addressed it. And so this last year and a half has been about going in there and cleaning that wound out so that I can complete my own stages of healing. And as a culture, as a collective, that is what I feel astrologically and from all perspectives we are being called to do now. This is where we are. This is the Band-Aid coming off, right? George Floyd, but George Floyd was not alone. These things have been building and building and building for decades. But this Saturn in Aquarius square Uranus and Taurus burst the wound open. The day, like right around the time that the riots happened, when the Black Lives Matter started, Saturn had ingressed into Aquarius and formed this square between Uranus. And this square is this energy that creates a challenge. It is about letting go. There's no way to avoid conflict or dealing with the issue when we have an aspect of this nature, especially between planets like these. So we are now at that point where the Band-Aid has been ripped away, and we've got to get back in there and start cleaning this wound out so that we can truly heal and truly build the world that we envision. That takes courage.
Mhm.
That takes courage.
So, yeah, definitely takes courage. And there's a quote here. I don't know if anybody out there are Harry Potter fans. I am. Okay, I admit it. I have all the books, I've got all the movies, I have all the DVDs. So, anyways, there's a really, really famous quote from one of the movies from Albus Dumbledore, who was one of the characters in Harry Potter. And he said, "There are all kinds of courage. It takes a great deal of bravery to stand up to our enemies, but just as much to stand up to our friends." And so I really like this quote a lot because it does take a lot of courage to stand out and be different among people that you hang out with on a regular basis, like your friends and your family. But if you know something isn't right in your soul, then you just have to find that courage to address it and just be who you have to be authentic. And then there's areas of courage, as you see here in the human body design chart. So we have an identity center, and then we have it in the spleen, the sacral, and the solar plexus, right? Making those decisions, or you make a decision and you wonder, did I make the right decision? What's going to happen? Maybe I'm going to it won't work out. So again, courage is, it's hard. I'll admit, I have my own issues with this resiliency key. And this is something I continue to work on. But I know if I don't move through the fear, then nothing will change for me with what I'm trying to accomplish with my life, with my business, with my family. I just have to step into that shadow, so then eventually I can move myself through to the light.
Yeah. And one of the centers here that is connected to courage is the spleen, right? And
Yeah.
that is the fear center that we talk about in human design. And this fear, though, this is an interesting one, because the courage to actually stand up for something like this is one that could be, at least in the past, put your life in danger. So it's not just the fear that is irrational that lives here. This is where this real courage is coming in, because these fears can be very rational fears. It's scary to speak up against injustice. It's
Yeah.
scary to speak up against family and friends that may harbor views that you don't agree with or that you don't share. And it takes a lot to do that, and a lot of feeling good about who you are within yourself as well. So it's just a really powerful resiliency key that we do and will be addressing as well in breaking the chains. The goal is empowerment, right? We are stronger together. And I do believe that we can build that type of future if we commit to doing the work now. When you feel empowered, feel like you have control over yourself and over your life. This work is bigger than any one person. I realized that when I was running through breaking the chains the first time. I said, I cannot do this alone. There is no way, because this work is bigger than me. This work came to me in a download that I received, and I wrote it down page for page in about 10 minutes. It was pages of information on this, and I just knew that this was something that I had to do. At the time that I received this download, I was actually living in Newport News, Virginia, which is actually very close to Fort Monroe, where the first enslaved Africans arrived. And I had been spending some time going over there because I wanted to feel the energy. I wanted to see this place. They had a memorial that they were building in this area to recognize these people. And it was just so powerful for me. So when that download came to me, I knew that this was something spiritually guided and a part of what my work in this world was to be about. But to do this work, it took me getting very real with myself, making sure that I was standing in my authenticity and knowing that at the end of this, because through this, it's not easy there. This is not an easy thing to do, to go into these shadows, into this darkness. And I know the deep in my heart that the reward for doing this work now is huge, and it's going to be bring so much benefit for those that come after us. So we are we are being the ancestors for these future generations that we hope to be. Like we are creating this blueprint for the future. So breaking the chains is about bringing awareness to the shadows. In this program, we're going to be utilizing the human design chart. So how you can use your own chart to move through some challenges that you might face or experience in life. We use the emotional freedom techniques and also the quantum alignment system resiliency keys, focusing on this intergenerational trauma and burnout. Because burnout, it's interesting because they're running that MAP session now on burnout. Intergenerational trauma burnt me out for a long time. And it was one of those things that I couldn't really place my finger on. But now I'm like, oh my goodness. So working through that is huge. We also have some embodiment practices where we're going to be working through where these energies are present in our body. So body practices, tuning into what the body is trying to tell us, learning about the history of trauma in the US on all bodies. So not just Black bodies, but white bodies, Black bodies, and the blue body, which is law enforcement. Recalibrating our energy systems to leave us with the ability to move through this world authentically. And we're going through these massive cycles of disruption right now. This is all for a reason. They will be intensifying. So having tools that we can use to move through these changes will be a must. This is what breaking the chains will help you achieve true resiliency.
So, what are some of the things, that you're going to take away if you decide that you want to participate in the program? So, we are going to be doing this as a group coaching, and it's going to be live coaching, live sessions. So, they're not pre recorded sessions. And this will be the only time that it will be in this format in a live setting. You're going to learn and you're going to feel comfortable working scientific tools from inadequacy, and maybe if you're feeling low self-worth, or even I would add to like self-values, your self-value is low. And you're going to be able to learn how to feel truly embodied and living your life in full power, empowerment. And for people who are actually in the program, we have our own Jamie from Quantum Alignment System. For those of you who know Jamie, she's also a specialist and she works with Karen, and she also develops and has her own essence store. And so she graciously accepted. We reached out to her. She's the first person we thought about doing this, and she's right now busy in her lab concocting a special breaking the chains blend to for us to work with the resiliency keys as we move throughout the program. And everybody who is involved with the program will get as a special welcome bonus, as a gift from Clarinda and I to you, your own essence that Jamie's putting together. So I'm really excited for that. I want to see what she comes up with. And I know she has a name. We're not going to say the name right now, but she's already got a name for the essence. So that's part of it. But besides that, I think it's going to be very powerful, and you'll be a part of a group environment with other people who are ready to do the work that they feel is necessary to help them move through their shadows. And, this work, like Clarinda said, is bigger than just any one person. And it's really, a call to you, a call to your soul if you feel ready to take that call and embrace it and move through it with other people who also want to see a change in the world as well as themselves. So if you feel that this is your calling and you want to learn some more about the program, then we'd love to hear from you. So as Clarinda had mentioned, the class is going to be intense at times. So that's our little disclaimer that, you know that. It takes a lot of work to get down into, what's happening with you on your emotional level. And as you do more work on yourself, more things come up and you feel like you want to run away from it. But you're going to be working with other people in the program that's going to help, like they're going to help you. And you're going to get that love and that safety with other people there. So you're not doing this by yourself. And like I mentioned, this is a big, I don't even know if issue is the right word, but I guess to make it simple, yes, this is a big issue. And, I think you'll feel really good knowing that you're helping yourself and you're helping to uplift the energy of the planet, because it takes one person at a time. You're going to gain resiliency and strength to make empowered decisions. And you're going to learn from the human design chart, because we're going to be talking about human design and looking at people's charts, so you can understand the best way that, for you to make decisions that are correct and feel good for you. And as we mentioned too, it's a live group coaching environment. So the seats are going to be very, very limited, because Clarinda and I are very determined and committed to making sure everybody in the class is seen and heard, feels welcomed, feels accepted and loved. And we want to have the time available to spend for everybody that takes part in the program. So if you are interested in learning more about breaking the chains, if you're ready to learn more to see if it's a good fit for you, then please contact us. There's a couple of ways you can do so. You can send us an email at info@breakingthechains.com, or to go on the wait list and be notified when registration opens. You can go to the link there, the URL there, bit.ly/BT Chains, and we are starting January the 2nd, 2022. So Clarinda, I'm going to head it off to you for the last final words.
Yeah, I'm just really excited about us shifting into this next round. The first round was amazing, and I saw huge results for myself and the people that participated. I think it was, people were seeing shifts happen in places they weren't expecting the shifts to happen. I think that's the amazing thing about breaking chains, right? We don't always know what chains are being broke and where those links come apart. But even Dawson Church, he has this great example of the tabletop analogy, and you got this tabletop, you've got 4 legs. You start taking those legs down, eventually the top falls, right? And we get to the overlying issue. So I think that was one of the biggest things that I saw happen for myself and for the others that participated. I can't wait to be doing this again. So if you are interested, like Lovaine mentioned, you can reach out to us at info@breakingthechains.com, or you can get on that wait list. And I hope that if you're ready, you reach out to us, and I can't wait to see you there.
Yeah, we're looking forward to meeting you and helping you move through this very challenging time, but we can all do it together.
Yeah, we're in this together. Lots of love.
Thank you for watching.